in the past 2 months of me kind of resurging some of my past interviews and reconnecting with new people in the Northeast before heading away again, talking to people around here, asking them who should I talk to. You got to talk to Justin Walker and his wife Danielle. What they're doing over there at Walkers is amazing. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. Quote unquote, 3 times. He does not get the credit he deserves. When I say that, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I don't care. Like I said, longtime employee, getting married, buying a house, got a dog, doing it on his own, with the hard work he's put in with us all these years. Like that's sort of my metric for success. Danielle and I have this mythical porch that we talk about, and someday we want to get to that porch, but that's it. We just sort of live every day. We take the business seriously. I worry about chefs that use social media for, oh, you did a good job. Oh, you're so busy. Oh, I feel so bad for you. Like when you need to get validation from people you don't see in person, that worries me. That's sort of the mental part of this business where I think if you can't handle it without getting pats on the back, just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, chef partner at Walkers Maine, Chef Justin Walker. My man Justin, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Dude, I'm psyched to have you here. And I think you were like episode 17 or 18. And when I have repeat guests on the show, I listen to the first interview to kind of like refresh where we picked up. The show has evolved so much since then that I'm just going to treat you like a brand new guest, man. I want to take you through it. You had some great one-liners in that interview. I know this is going to be good. I can't wait to kind of dive into it. But real quick, just like paint that big picture. Like, what is Walkers Maine today?
Walkers Maine is a wood-fired centric restaurant in Cape Neddick or York, Maine. It was always our dream to come back home. My wife, Danielle Walker, has lived in Cape Neddick her entire life for several generations, and we wanted to be back here to raise our son, to be still do the business at a high level, but also sort of try to find the balance of family and business.
I love that. How many seats?
125 seats.
125 seats. What are your channels of revenue? So you have your dine-in seating. What else? Is there catering, things like that?
So we started with, when we opened, we started with just the a la carte restaurant. And we slowly intermix sort of in-house events with the idea that we always would do out-of-house events. So that could be, food festivals, it could be bike races, charity events, and then also, weddings.
Okay.
So we wanted to, by year 3, be kind of full head into that. We've done that our whole careers together. And we wanted to sort of launch that with the idea that we'd have Walkers as an a la carte restaurant functioning properly before we started going off the reservation, if you will.
Got it. And you're a partner, so it's you, your wife.
Yeah. So we have there's actually 6 partners.
Oh wow.
And we are all equal partners. We all bring something to the table. Restaurants like this size, this scale take a lot of capital to start. And we are very lucky to have some amazing people reach out to us sort of at the perfect part of our life and also career to make this sort of dream a reality. We all function in the business in one way or another still to this day. And it's obviously it's worked really well. It is a challenging thing to get used to, especially as a chef where you have all of sort of the say in what you do. You have to remember that there's other people involved and, everybody needs to be consulted. And I think that comes with maturity.
Yeah.
And I think that's like I said, the right point of our life, the right point of our careers to accept the help and grow.
Yeah, I can't wait to unpackage how you manage that partnership because I think the future of the industry is going to hinge on partnerships. Mm-hmm. I think it's the only way to do it. Before we officially dive into your story, I got to ask the question, give us an idea of like total gross, like what kind of numbers are you doing?
Well, so Walkers does about a third more today than it did when we opened. When Walkers opened, it was busy. And it was never slow. It was always busy. It was always incredibly challenging. Massive hours, massive weeks. And it was kind of just a barely break even, slightly better than break even.
This is when you opened in 2017.
Yeah. And we knew that the restaurant sort of had limited growth as far as seats.
125 seats.
125 seats is a good number because you need to do the numbers when the people are here. Obviously the season ebbs and flows. We are open year round. But January is never going to be as good as August.
Right.
And you sort of limp through those winter months to get to the period of time where, it makes a ton of sense to be operating. So we...
the suspense.
Yeah. So we knew that catering was the piece that was going to really allow us to put some dollars in the bank. And that's what allows us today to grow. That's really where our growth is.
Yeah.
And we kind of really enjoy it as well, as challenging, incredibly challenging as it is. So I would say, if you're going to open a restaurant, a 60-seat restaurant, I don't think anywhere in Maine really works all that well. There's just not a dense enough population.
Right. Unless like maybe Portland.
Maybe. But, you're hearing about...
Also a lot of restaurants closing in Portland.
You're hearing about a lot of restaurants closing in Portland.
Yeah.
That's due to a couple factors, I think. We have a lot of friends who own restaurants in Portland, dear friends that we care for very deeply in their business and their personal lives and whatnot. And they all work incredibly hard.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how hard you work, I guess, is kind of a...
Are you doing over $1 million?
Oh, yeah.
Are you doing over $2 million?
Yes.
3?
That's as far as I'm
Okay, so we're getting an idea. We're getting an idea, and I can't wait to kind of figure. And that's with all of your assets: a la carte, dining, catering, events, all this stuff. So okay, now we have an idea who we're talking to. Let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you have for us?
I mean, be prepared to work harder than you ever have in your entire life. If you are going to own a restaurant of this size, to make it successful, meaning you can pay your employees an actual living wage, which nowadays is massive. It's close to probably double what we paid when we started, and it's really not that long ago. If you, as the operator, are willing to work really hard, you can make this a viable, successful thing for everybody. Mm-hmm. But don't, under no illusions, think that you're going to work less.
Yeah, it's so true. And to your point where it's getting harder and harder, that's why I'm pushing to get these numbers, because I feel like the only way we're going to make it viable for everybody is by helping each other out. And
I think a good way to explain is I recently saw a proposal for a restaurant in Portsmouth. Somebody's trying to sell investment in an idea, and they sent numbers, and they're hilarious because first of all,
I might know the operation.
The revenue size is insanity. When we did Walkers, we basically would take day by day. So we would start like, okay, let's start January 1st.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to be open 5 days a week. What are we going to do for revenue on a Wednesday? How many people are we going to do? What's our check average? And we basically went day by day for the entire year. And it's crazy arduous. So you have days where you're thinking, I will probably do 40. So maybe we're going to do $2,500 in revenue. And then there's nights where you're going to do, 6-7 times that. And we would total that all together and come up with a number. Does that make sense? So then on the profit side, you got to do a lot of business before you even see 1% of profit. But once you turn over that, it's sort of the Tesla model where they got to make 5,000 cars a day or whatever it is. He knows the numbers, that's how these valuations come about. He can see it turns over really quickly. Once you get to that larger number and that massive amount of work in business, then you start seeing a serious return. So look at the numbers. Be honest with yourself. I don't think there's multiple millions of dollars a year revenue for restaurants in much of the state of Maine. I think if you're doing multiples, then you're lucky or you are really, really smart.
Yeah, I have a feeling you know your numbers, and I can't wait to dissect those numbers when the time comes. But I want to go back to the beginning.
Sure.
I will say this. I remember when I first interviewed you, this quote you said, in 2000, this would be 2014, you said you've been doing this for 17 years, and you just got recognized for a Rising Star Chef. Yeah. And I think that offers great context.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, it would have been like 1998.
Yeah. So I started working in restaurants in, I think, 1989.
Okay.
Which is hilarious.
Did you age well?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't feel like it. But anyways, so I lived in New York State. I was a fairly high-level ski racer, coming up through the state system, doing lots of training at night, lots of running around, lots of hours. I would do 14, 16, 18-hour days when I was really young. School, training, back to school, like nonstop. So I sort of like
getting conditioned for the
sort of
restaurant
bred
industry.
for the restaurant business. And then to help pay for it, my parents came from really modest means. And they said, if you are willing to help, we'll make it happen. And so I started mowing lawns. My very first lawn was $10. It took me 2 hours or longer. And I did that for a whole summer, my $10 a week. My parents continued to contribute to my racing. Grew that business to the point actually where my father turned it into a professional landscaping business, which is hilarious. And I owned 6 lawnmowers. They would each get brought to.
How old were you? I think you said it, but I forget.
14, 15.
14.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And my dad would drop them off at those accounts, 6 accounts in the morning on the way to work. And I would ride my bike from account to account.
Jesus.
And mow.
How'd you tow the lawn? So you had the mowers?
No, I had enough where
push?
I could. Yeah, they were Honda like 20 whatever they are, the little teeny ones.
Got it.
Not they were nice lawnmowers. I mean,
I was like, were you towing the?
No. I didn't have equipment at that. I never had really big equipment until my dad went pro. But then he would meet me after work and we would finish the rest of the jobs. My dad worked with me every day in the summer cutting grass to help. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. And so then it became, I started getting a lot faster and a lot better. I was number 1 in New York from when I can't remember now, but I was probably like 13.
Mowing lawns or skiing?
Ski racing. Okay. 13 until I was 17, let's just say. I can't remember the time period. But and I started getting good. And my parents wanted to put me in boarding school that revolved entirely around winter sports. I was very, very lucky to attend National Sports Academy, the highlight of my life. Really amazing place to grow up. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. But they said we need to get some more dollars. So what can you do? And my mom worked in banks, and she knew some restaurateurs, and they were looking for dishwashers back when kids washed dishes. And she basically signed me up. So my first summer in the restaurant business, I cut grass. I worked at Subway because she also had an account with Subway, and they needed somebody to make sandwiches. So I'd ride 40 miles to the Subway on my bike.
This is where your passion for cycling
involved. Out of default, right? Because I couldn't drive. Yeah. I would work all day on Subway. I did that until this seasonal restaurant I worked at in Saratoga called Ciro's. It was really an amazing place. It was only open 6 weeks a year. It did a ton of business. It was right off the racetrack. It had several partners, one of which owned restaurants in the Hamptons. And so at the time, David Burke, I can't even remember now. It's been so long. The big chefs in New York were David Burke, Jasper White was big in Boston, sort of the grandfathers of our business. And he knew all of the chefs. And so every summer, the restaurants in New York kind of died off at that time. And so he would hire these cooks, and he paid them $1,000 a week. This is in the 80s. To line cook. And these guys are sous chefs and chefs on the best restaurants in New York City. So I started washing dishes in this restaurant, very quickly grew to, the salad boy, the whole deal, and then managed the kitchen. I did the ordering. I wasn't driving, so I was 15, 16.
Wow. Did the ordering?
I did the ordering, the produce order.
I want to tap the brakes real quick.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a shining example of the level of trust and responsibility you can give your front level line staff.
Yeah.
I think that we put so much pressure on ourselves to do all these things. If you give people a system, if you give them a process, if you teach them the way, they are very capable of doing it. But you have to build the structure around that. So how did they do this for you?
Well, this is sort of the heyday of kitchen confidential, if you will. So chefs were pretty hardcore back in those days. Drugs and alcohol were a major part of the landscape. I was so young and an athlete, I never touched anything ever. And, these guys were just kind of done. So I kind of got the responsibility out of default. And also I was this young kid who wanted to work hard. And that was obviously, even back then, was something that was, seen as, refreshing. So you have to keep in mind, there weren't apps, there weren't cell phones, there weren't computers, there was no order guides. It was just, you learned how the things came, you learned what we needed, you learned how we went through it all, you organized it. So after service every night, I would stay and organize the walk-ins, figure out what we needed, do the order, receive the order the next day. If it didn't come in, if too much came in, if it came in, good quality, bad quality, I was the guy that got sort of crucified for that, believe it or not. But you learn, and that has really helped me throughout my career to be on top of things and to multitask. It was a great experience. I worked there for 6 summers, and then made my way to Maine.
I just want to emphasize too, when you do give people the responsibility, when you offload, when you delegate, they get better.
Yeah.
And this is how you grow, because they don't just stop there. Your whole team gets better when this happens.
Yeah.
Like you said, you learned, you grew. And I think that's just one of those key things, is just giving that responsibility. You'll be surprised, right? Anyway, keep going.
Well, I think the thing you just said, responsibility is great. I think there's a shift in, all workforces across the world. There's this mythical sort of work-life balance. I know that is a massive topic for everybody. In those days, our business was still really blue collar. It was, TV thing hadn't really taken off. It was like the Two Hot Tamales and Graham Care and Mauro Batali was just starting. Emeril Lagasse was just starting. There's those conventional cooking class shows that they did. And, this is how long ago this was. And, there was no sit downs like, you're going to work more, we're going to pay you more. You just worked more. And you needed to get better. Anything blue collar is a trade. And the only way to get better at things is to pound a lot of nails. And, I knew that. The advice I was given very, very early on, and I'll never forget this, was don't ever work in a bad restaurant. You'll never learn bad habits. And just keep learning. And so nowadays we have these cell phones. You can access information in seconds, and yet still people don't seem to use them for that purpose. In those days we had to go to libraries. We got Art Culinaire. We would get the cooking magazines. I would, get them for Christmas, back issues, and just kind of comb through them and learn. And nowadays it's really a lot easier. But you had to be driven in those days, because there was no picture. I saw a video of Gordon Ramsay driving his $800,000 Ferrari, and good for him. You know what I mean? He deserves it. He made that happen. There wasn't any delusions that was a thing when I was coming up. You sort of just wanted to be the best cook you could. You always wanted to have the answers for the chef. You wanted to be the fastest, the most efficient, the most organized. And that was the goal.
So what I'm curious about, when did your focus shift from skiing to career?
All right. So interesting. So ski racing took me all the way to Division I, NCAA Division I in college. I went to a small school. I got a very good rate to go there because of my ski racing ability. And
what did you study?
I studied hotel restaurant management.
Oh, cool.
And that was one of the reasons why I went to that school. I could have gone to any of the D1 schools.
What school was it?
Johnson State.
Got
it. We trained with UVM every day. It was just I made a good financial decision. Yeah. I was good, but I was, I finished in Junior Olympics the year before I went to college. I was still had another year of being a junior. And I finished 13th in the giant slalom, which is out of 133 guys. There's 2 Junior Olympics in the country. It's a pretty substantial. And these, that was the Bodie Miller
That's
era.
awesome.
That was Bodie Miller era. So these are against sort of when the U.S. got good at ski racing again.
Got it.
Anyhow, so my coach said to me, Justin, you should just go to college. Because I wanted to PG, take a postgraduate year, put some money into ski racing, see how far I could take it. But but I always wanted to cook. I always wanted to be a chef at that point.
When did that come into, like, was it just working?
It was the second I stepped foot in a restaurant.
Got it.
I just fell in love with the pace. I fell in love with the camaraderie.
Did you know you wanted to own a restaurant?
No. So no, that came much later.
What up, Unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
How old were you when you joined Mark and Clark?
I think I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
So all this is happening before that 15-year stint with Mark and Clark.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So and then when I go to college, I skied pretty well. You got to realize, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the country. I was pretty happy with my ski racing, but I realized
that's a huge accomplishment.
There was no chance I was ever going to make a living out of it.
Which is smart. I think a lot of young men and women, that frontal lobe, the ability to reason, doesn't really round off until like your late 20s. So to know that, like, if you can't go all the way, if that shot is going to be really hard, then to not bury yourself chasing a dream.
Yeah,
right?
I just sort of, like, it was just obvious to me, like, you have to pay for the college. You know what I mean? Like, You're not going to get away from it. And I could take the dollars that I was using to go to restaurant management school, to ski race essentially.
Yeah.
To go to culinary school instead. So I ended up going to culinary school. So I decided to quit racing. I'm done. I want to go to culinary school. Next semester, I went to New England Culinary Institute. I did advanced placement program. I took a practical test and a written test. I tested out of most of the first year, and I was only there for about 9 months, and I got the degree. That led me to Arrows.
Okay. So the question I ask all folks that go to culinary school, knowing what you know today, is that the advice you'd give somebody else to go through culinary school, or would you take a different path?
No, I think so. I mean, I have a very good friend who's a dean at Johnson & Wales. He is a dear friend and incredibly driven, loves education, loves teaching kids. There's a lot more to this business than just, slugging it out in restaurants. And they do a good job there, I think, at being a university. And you can still get the university experience, which I think is super important for kids. Yeah. Like, my son is, he's going to be that generation that maybe does the trades, maybe goes to college. It's sort of not 100% like you're going to college like it was for us, probably.
There's so many resources and tools today beyond the traditional model.
Yeah. So, so, I mean, but if you want to do this business and you want that, you deserve for yourself to have that university feel. Again, you're going to pay for it.
I will say this. There seems to be a trend whenever somebody chooses to go to culinary school and they're in like their mid-20s or later, they seem to get the most out of it because they're driven. They want to wring that opportunity, every last ounce out of it.
I'm glad you said that because I tested out of the first year of New England Culinary Institute, right? So that was a massive amount of the program. Like, all the basics I already knew.
Because you started. Yeah.
Because I worked in the business. Yeah. And, that we don't see anymore. And that's the part that's super terrifying.
I think, have you ever heard like The Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 Hours? There seems to be a pattern that when people start very early, look at, like, I think they profile the founder of Windows. Why am I drawing a blank on this name right now? Gates.
Yeah.
Bill Gates. He started computers when he was like young. He just had this opportunity where he was like not even a teenager, I think, and he just started he just dove head in. So he was already light years ahead of all this competition by the time he was going through college. But I think similarly to you started so young because you had this passion and something driving you. And I think also you were much more mature than most young men at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I had to be,
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing my laundry at 14 and I was living alone. I had a checkbook, I think we had debit cards at that point, but you couldn't use them at the store. You had to go to the bank and get money and whatnot. So I was managing all of that,
Wow.
Already.
So you tested out.
Yeah. So I tested out. The other thing too was the same person that gave me that advice to never work in bad restaurants also said, work as hard as you can while you're young, because you need to get as far as you can early on in your life, because this business is hard on your body. It's hard mentally. So get good fast.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that sort of scares me about this current generation. I don't know where we're going to eat in 20 or 30 years, because you're wasting 10 years, and you see people in our business will in and out of, they'll go in, they'll go out, they go up to Sugarloaf for the winter, and then they take the time off. And the whole time that's happening, I'm cooking thousands of pieces of meat and fish and vegetables, and managing people and managing myself and managing my family. And you just get really good at things you work at. You know what I mean? So some people wonder why other people get ahead. It's because they work and they don't stop. And unfortunately, there's no secret that has to happen in this business in order to get.
There's a lot of competition out there.
Yeah.
So 19 years old. So
Yeah.
you tested out of the first year. When did you graduate, Johnson and Wales?
Geez, I didn't go. I went to New England Culinary
No,
Institute.
sorry, New England
No
Culinary.
worries. I graduated. Actually, I never went to my graduation. I was working. I graduated my second summer at Arrows.
Oh wow.
I think is
So
when
you're
I
21 years
officially graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
New England Culinary-
I did my internship at Arrows, my second internship, which I didn't go back to school after that. So I was at Arrows doing my internship, and then the rest is sort of history after
So
that.
2-year program.
It was, but I like I said, I was there. I did part of it's so hilarious. I had to do baking first year, which was amazing. I still remember everything I learned, because that's the part you just don't get unless you do it. And I had to do first year front of the house table service, which was awful. I've luckily forgotten all of that, but anyways, I had to do those two things, which was really interesting. The only thing I did learn in first year table service was, boy, if you knew the food, that's the part I knew I could control. If I knew the food, man, your tables you could be like a total idiot at the table. But if you knew your food and you could really give them that experience, they overlooked it. And these people knew they were in teaching restaurants, of course, but still, it was busy restaurants.
Right.
But I remember having a really hard time with the order of service and sort of organizing all of that, remembering position numbers. But I knew the food.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I actually tried to get a job at Margarita's Mexican restaurant, and it was around the time where they were really kind of standardizing everything, and they had almost 20 locations, and I couldn't handle all the steps of service that they have. The drink goes here. You say this at this time. I was so in my head about messing up that I love chaos. I thrive in just this whole interview is chaos. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. So I can see how that could trip you up.
Yeah. I think you control things as a chef, but there's also that part of your brain that just kind of thrives in chaos.
Right.
And if you learn to thrive in chaos, you can really. I think it's the only way you survive.
Right. So I mean, we're probably over 30 minutes into this interview already, man, and we are just getting to your core 15 years at Arrows with Mark and Clark.
Yeah.
We have so much to unpackage, but I mean, 15 years. Paint the picture of what Mark and Clark was when you came there and where you left, and then your points of evolution while here.
Yeah. So I mean, Mark and I are exactly 20 years apart in age, and so he would have been just barely 40 or just under 40 when I started. So he was 7-8 years younger than I am now. So about the same age that we opened Walkers, I was about 40. So they had already done 10 years at Arrows, and they were coming off of a really, really poor year. Of course, I didn't know this until years later. They had a really, really poor year the year before, and Mark was still working the line. Clark was in the kitchen during the day and the front at night. They were very, very hands-on at that point.
How far in were they?
They were 10 years in
10
at
years
that point.
in?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was their 11th year, I believe.
And this was 98?
98, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, they did that with a checkbook, credit cards. I mean,
Wow.
they didn't get any help. I think maybe Clark's parents might have helped with like some of the construction, but those two, like, they made it work. And Mark has some hilarious stories about funding that restaurant with his personal credit cards. But I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit,
So they were struggling the year prior to you joining. They were struggling.
I don't know. I just think struggling
Relative
financially.
to where they were
Yeah. I
eventually.
mean, you have to realize what that restaurant was and where it is and where it was and the
pay
time
homage.
period. Yeah, like, forget it. Like, if you told me to open that restaurant, I wouldn't feel comfortable opening it in Yountville, California. I mean, let's be honest. Like, that's a very, very challenging model, and I give them a lot of credit for sticking with it all those years and making it successful for a really long time.
Yeah, they were doing, when California was starting to be recognized as like this area that's doing food as holistically from the source as possible, from scratch, everything, baking, like all that. They were doing that in Maine, Ogunquit, Maine.
Yeah, and they had a garden in 90. I think the gardens, I'm going to misquote this, but it's either, in my head, it's either 92, 94, or 96 is when they started the garden, one of those 3 years. And it grew, I mean, all the way through until, they sold the business to be a massive undertaking and financial. I can't imagine financially making that decision. Like, that makes, to me, like,
What they accomplished.
forget it. Like,
To stay
you're just
open for 10 years.
Yeah,
the first 10
just
years.
forget it. Like, you can't understand what the economics of that are. I mean, it's like adding another food cost expense on top of your already food cost expense. I just don't know how you do it.
And talk about like giving your whole life to it. Like they lived upstairs.
Yeah, they lived upstairs
Yeah.
for I don't know the exact time. They were out when I started, but I think it only been a couple years.
So what's cool is that you came in, like they were kind of at this point where like they're doing the work, they're getting recognized. They hadn't quite gotten the traction that they got, say, like by 2005, 2006, 2007, where they were really becoming nationally.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
It was
at any
98
point.
was the year that they were on the cover of, I think it was Bon Appetit, and that magazine, back then that was like the gold standard, right? And they were a huge, massive spread in there, and that's when business took off.
Yeah.
That's all it took.
And so what's cool is you got to kind of be a part of this. You got to see the evolution from like where it really caught traction nationally. You're also making me want to ask about this, and it's something that I've identified where like a lot of the Mark and Clark Arrows type restaurants, I like to do that. I think people need to understand like you almost need that national acclaim, that media behind you to make it successful, because that marketing arm, without that marketing arm. And I sometimes wonder, is this one of the issues with our industry where like we need the stars, the awards, the food and wine, and how hard is it to get that attention today? You know what I'm saying?
I think so. I mean, equate this to ski racing. The fastest guy to the bottom wins, right? You can come up with all the excuses on the planet. Fastest guy or girl to the bottom, from the top to the bottom, wins the race. Doesn't matter how they look. Doesn't matter what happened. Doesn't matter anything. Doesn't matter snow conditions. Nothing. The fastest person down wins the race. In our business, that's not really the case, and I think we're all pretty clear on that. Mark and Clark spent all of their money promoting their business to make it successful, but also to achieve something. You have to realize, they started in 88. 2 gay men. Not incredibly popular with the press,
right?
I mean, essentially a married couple, but they couldn't be married, and they did it, man. They had it. They had to do that to survive, and the beard stuff for them. Yes, they wanted the recognition. They felt that their business, their restaurant was special, which it was, but it took a lot to get those people to Maine. And I've cooked all over the country. I mean, tens of thousands of dinners in New York, California, Chicago. I mean, I can't even remember it all.
Were you traveling with Arrows?
Yeah. So I traveled a lot. And every spring we would just do massive amounts of marketing events and chef summits and all kinds of stuff. And that was super fun. I mean, I met a lot of people, a lot of amazing people. You got to see sort of the good, bad, and the ugly of the business too. It was really hard to break into that sort of club. We started off, once we left Arrows, we had the opportunity to work in another restaurant together. And we knew that was an important piece of that. And we did spend a lot of time with that. When we opened Walkers, we sort of started that way. and decided pretty early on that we needed to focus on our business.
Wait, that way being like the romance side
Trying to use press to promote your business instead of just creating a product and honing it to make it great. And to make the business viable.
I love this.
Yeah. Yep.
I like to say, like, it's the way I communicate that is you don't grow, you don't get to that point by putting the energy out, trying to get the awards, trying to get the attention. You get there by putting the energy in.
Yeah.
By taking all that energy, focus on what can we do 1% better today, and all elements of your business, all verticals of your business.
I mean, we looked at like, the out of house, what I would call out of house, like PR events. I did thousands of them with Mark and Clark, and they were all fun. We had a blast every single time. Mark and Clark were incredibly generous. I ate in some of the best restaurants in the country. I mean, I worked really hard, but like those are great memories. And then we wanted to offer that to our staff, in the other sense arrows as well. Not just the promotion, but also that camaraderie and the sort of rite of passage of doing the midnight run in New York, doing Degustibus, doing the Beard House, and all the challenges that go with that. I just as soon do these dinners and go hide. Like I did find myself not wanting to be the talent once I left.
Why is that?
I don't know. I enjoyed it. So again, it's the ski racing analogy. Fastest guy wins, right? Like I didn't feel that in this business. I was like, well, I did my best. I think it's pretty good, but like I'm probably not going to win. And but I did it because I love to do it. It never bothered me that I didn't win. It doesn't bother me that I've never been nominated for a Beard Award, and never will be. It really just doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, longtime employee this year, Matt Yauk, aka Powder, 14 years. He's been, almost 15 years. He's been with us as long as Jackson's been alive, our son. He bought a house, got married, like that. Those economics came from these economics. And so I'm proud of that.
Yeah,
and I think that is, for me, the true success of a restaurant.
And I'm happy you're sharing this out without me having to probe it out of you. And I think that's a lot of the underlying message of this show, is to help people focus on what you're talking about, get into this industry for those reasons.
Yeah.
If you're looking for acclaim, acknowledgement, if your ego's in the way, like that, there seems to be like this like disease spreading around the industry.
I mean,
right now.
I don't use social media. I'm sure you looked at that. We use social media for the business. Because it's a great marketing tool. It's a great tool to get out to people what we're doing. But I think it's done really tastefully. I think Danielle does an amazing job of making it sort of not a brag. You're not trying to make people feel bad. Like there's certain chefs that love to post, I'm doing this and I didn't sleep and I did that. I mean, I've been doing that for my entire 27 years in this business, not sleeping. But you'll never see a post of me like, oh, I didn't sleep. There actually is one on my Instagram from like the Earth days when I drove down to Rhode Island to do a bike race, and I regret that I did that. Because that makes people feel bad, and I'm willing to, what you're willing to do, the next person might not be willing to do.
Yeah. How does that make them feel bad?
I just think it's like, it's so hard. I think, social media is, you only get people to see what they want to see. And right. I understand that. Like, I need to show them what I'm actually doing. Nobody wants to see what I'm actually doing. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to see what I do. Trust me, because it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. I mean, and I'm not trying to be a downer here, but like I am so conditioned to it. I enjoy it. I thrive in it, but it's getting harder as I get older.
Yeah. It's also misleading.
It is misleading. Like I don't know, like do what you do, work as hard as you want. If you can make it work and work half as much, fantastic. Great. Yeah. I can't. Yeah. So I don't know how to do that.
I will say there were at least 3 occasions in the past 2 months of me kind of resurging some of my past interviews and reconnecting with new people in the Northeast before heading away again, talking to people around here, asking them, who should I talk to? You got to talk to Justin Walker and his wife, Danielle. What they're doing over there at Walkers is amazing. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. No. Quote unquote, 3 times. He does not get the credit he deserves. When I say that, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I don't care. Like I said, like, longtime employee, getting married, buying a house, got a dog, doing it on his own, with the hard work he's put in with us all these years. Like that's sort of my metric for success. Danielle and I have this mythical porch that we talk about, and someday we want to get to that porch, but that's it. We just sort of live every day. We take the business seriously. I worry about chefs that use social media for, oh, you did a good job. Oh, you're so busy. Oh, I feel so bad for you. Like, when you need to get validation from people you don't see in person, that worries me. That's sort of the mental part of this business where I think if you can't handle it without getting pats on the back, just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to do with this podcast too, is to talk people out of it, to get to to pull the facade, to pull the vanity metrics, to pull what you see online away from it and have an uncut 2-hour-long conversation. Yeah. This is the reality.
Yeah. I mean, and Walkers, like, it never struggled. Let's be honest. We opened this place. People are like, I can't believe you're so busy. It didn't it took 20 years. I mean, literally 20 years to open a restaurant, click open the doors, and immediately be successful.
Right.
It's not the food. It's not the ambiance. It's none of that crap. It's really Danielle and I are one and the same. We have been in this together. We are always in this together. And I am not doing this on my own. That is for sure. And
I would love to get her on the show.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely the better half. Those who know us certainly know that. But I can blindly go out through my day. There's things I know a lot about our infrastructure and our business and our building, and there's a lot of stuff that I can do, and there's some things that I cannot do, and I have to call her, which is hilarious.
Well, I mean, that's what a partnership's all about.
Yeah, totally. And there's no like, well, I have to do this and you have to do that. Like, we work very, very well together. But I sort of lost my.
No, you're good, man. I do want to hone in on like 98 to basically it would have been 2013.
12
when you were with Walkers. They closed, I think, a year after. Not Walkers, sorry, Arrows.
Yeah,
they closed
right
a year after, right?
Yeah.
So you got to kind of see this evolution of like caught traction, boom, close. But I'm not so much. I would love to get Mark and Clark on the show as well to kind of get the story from their perspective. But what I'm interested in is, who were you when you went into that restaurant? Who were you when you came out of it? Like, what were your personal challenges and how did you grow from this experience?
I mean, I never looked at my bank account for years. I'm not making a lot of money to start. I'm going to live in a room. I lived in a room at a men's home, like, a mentally challenged men's home for $70 a week. Didn't bother me one bit.
Did you choose that just pure economics?
I couldn't afford it, and I didn't want to worry about like having the fancy apartment. Like, I wasn't delusional. However, Mark and Clark helped make that happen for me. But I wanted to work. I didn't want to worry about like making money, because I was like, I'm going to put this time in now, and hopefully down the road, as I learn to be a chef and become more knowledgeable, I'll just make more money. And that is just a lost thing nowadays.
So you wanted to work. Why did you want to work? Like, was it just to? Because you knew if you got that experience
in ski racing, like, there's a lot of talented ski racers. Like, certain people are just talented in their technique. They're just fast. It's just the way it is. Then there's people that have a physical ability to train hard, and they don't have the talent maybe. I can control the train hard part. I can't control the talent. You work on your technique. It takes, again, it's blue collar, just like this. But I knew if I just put my head down and worked every night and plated every single dish as fast and as efficient as I possibly could, it was only going to get better and easier.
Yeah.
And I just focus, and still to this day, we focus on every single plate. I'm not cooking like the food here, but I'm watching every single little detail.
You're not cooking the food here as in Arrows.
Like at Arrows, I was on the line, like, cooking
I was gonna say.
lion's share of the food, and I was fully responsible for, the whole deal. But
chef de cuisine.
Yeah, I was sous chef. I think second or third year I became a sous chef, and then how old's Sarah's son? I can't. I'd have to really do the math, but maybe a year or two after that, I became chef de cuisine.
Got.
And then eventually executive chef, which was just a title change, really. It didn't change anything.
So, I mean, what were your challenges going? I mean, as you just pointed out that as the title changed, your responsibilities didn't change. But like, how were you growing? How were you a better man coming out of this? I mean, obviously all the experience. of cooking.
So you start by like Mark and Clark were I don't know who does this and whoever would do this, but this is how they did it, and it made me a really good cook. But you'd come in on a Tuesday when the first day of the week, and Clark or Mark would come up and say, okay, you have 2 new dishes, and then they would just dictate it to you. And then you made the food. There were no recipes. There were no, I'll make it for you. I'll bring you the food. I'll have it all. You just made the food.
What was your struggle?
I never struggled with that because I loved it. It was, I would put in more hours.
With that specifically being just like making the food, just the creativity part of it?
Well, so that gave you some creativity. However, you weren't responsible for coming up with the dishes. So then I wanted menu writing responsibilities. And when I became chef de cuisine, I really wanted that. That was like, I wasn't really being a chef at that point because I felt like I was cooking the food and I was doing it really well. And I was creating because they would just give you words. Like you made the dish out of their words. There wasn't like, there was no pictures. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but, I asked for menu writing responsibilities, and we would meet every year in the winter, right at the end of the season, and you'd get your like what your raise was going to be and this sort of thing, and it was always really nice. And I said I want a menu responsibility, and they were like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, it'll be like a dish or whatever. And then every spring we would meet, and they would show me the new menu. We would go over it. We would do all the ordering. We would talk about each dish in detail. Troubleshoot the food because we never repeated things there. And that first meeting, so they were like, so what do you have for dishes? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you're going to do half the menu. We're going to do half the menu. And I was like, oh my God. And that was that, like, you got what you wanted, you want what you're going to get type moment. And okay. And I just, all right, let's meet in 2 days. And I went and I sharpened my pencil and racked my brain and that was it. And it was incredibly challenging, incredibly stressful. But that's big boy stuff.
Yeah.
In a restaurant like that, not like the little restaurant, down the street, like the real deal, national acclaimed, massive amount of press, massive optics,
What was the challenge for you?
No, I mean, I was willing to put in the time. The challenge was to come up with food that was their level, and that was progressive without copying people. And I remember I did a dish one time with whitefish, and it was poached. It was so delicate, and it had a consomme and this and that, and it didn't sell. And Clark worked in the front, so he would get some feedback. And he said, Justin, people just don't. It's beautiful, that's an amazing dish. He said, but people just, I don't think they're gravitating towards it because it isn't rich. There isn't butter, this sort of thing. And I remember like, oh, you know what? I don't really like to eat that either. Like when you're eating it, you're like, well, it's fine, but it's like, looks cool, but like, so that was a moment for me where I was like, I really flipped it. I was like, you have to think about the guests. You have to think about what you like and stay true to what you like in food and not just what you're trying to like achieve for some sort of award or whatever, magazine content or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was there's just, I learned so much. I was given the ability to work as much as I wanted, do whatever I wanted, order whatever I wanted. And I took every single second of those 15 years and did that.
So it sounds like the challenge was to create this like Venn diagram of what do I want to do? How can I find the commonality with what I want to do and what the guest wants to have? But then I think there's probably a third circle that crosses in that space is, can we make money doing this?
Yeah.
Is it profitable?
Yeah. So I wasn't there yet in my career.
Okay.
I had no idea what a P&L was. I had no idea what our revenue was.
I was curious about that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you any of that. Mark and Clark didn't share much of that.
I was curious about that too.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean,
why can you understand it?
Honestly, I think, to be completely honest with you, I don't think it ever did that well. I think they were able to make a decent living. They poured so much money into glassware and china and
real estate. Like
chairs.
How much are these places? They're like think about where they're located too,
yeah, I mean, I just don't make those decisions as a business owner because I couldn't. If it's not going to make us money and provide some sort of value to the guests, I just don't see it.
They own the buildings?
Yeah, they own the building.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. So, I mean, putting this through my lens, it's like, what is success? I think that's another thing that I've had to learn as the host of this podcast, is that term in this industry is so relative that, that's why I talk to everybody, because I think it's important for the listener to understand, like, you need to create a restaurant on your terms. What are you trying to do? For Mark and Clark, you can tell that their passion was the details. And to be able to have an outlet to express themselves, to have this passion to do the thing, and to maybe they wanted the recognition for it, that, to be seen is a human need. To be seen and valued for what you're doing is a human need, and to be seen and valued for the thing you're passionate about is very powerful. Not necessarily like the awards, but like the recognition from your peers, right?
Yeah.
That's success. Like their name will echo for years beyond.
I mean, I give them a massive amount of credit now, being a business owner, now to sort of understanding what those P&Ls probably look like,
right?
Without seeing them. I mean, I just, that's a hard decision to make.
But also, how many restaurants do they own properties?
Well,
now?
no, they only own one property.
Arrows?
Just Arrows. So they leased MC.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm assuming that property, if they were to sell that building,
it didn't sell for much when they sold it.
Okay.
Not what you think. And I think it just sold for more than twice of what they sold it for.
That's a killer to hear. Because I mean, that's in my mind, if that's your approach, like there's the retirement plan of building up at the asset, the location, if it's beachfront property.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean,
But they have the cookbooks too. Were they making money from that?
No, you don't make money on cookbooks.
Yeah. Marketing.
I mean, I think you probably do okay, like in your business, because you buy them for half and sell them for So, but yeah, I mean, but they paid. They pumped so much money into making those things happen.
Yeah.
At a level that was just crazy.
Were there any other challenges for you during this 15-year period that you think kind of really molded you and galvanized who you became?
Yeah, I mean, so on the business side, not seeing the P&Ls, but just understanding, businesses slowing down. Like,
when did that start to happen?
Well, okay, so 01 was massive. So 9/11, like, business just stopped. And if all you restaurant owners out there know that you lose a day, a week, or a couple days a month, or a week a month, like you are paying money now to keep your business open. So that happened. They did MC, I think 04 or 05. I can't remember now when that was. 05, I think. And that was massively successful. So that was a more approachable restaurant, more approachable price point. The food made a lot more sense to people, and that was really successful. I think that's when Mark and Clark personally started doing a lot better. And Arrows sort of suffered from 05, right? So the idea I learned from there was don't open two restaurants in the same town. I don't care if they're totally different. Specifically, don't open two that are a massive price point difference, because people always justify the cheaper ones just as good as the more expensive one. So I think I learned that on the business piece. And then 2008 just grenaded the restaurant. So 2008 was the housing crisis. And we haven't seen anything like this, right? When COVID happened, I was like, here it is. This is our modern. It never happened. And that's why nobody learned any lessons. And that's why you're seeing the issues you're seeing today with restaurants struggling to make it work. 08 just grenaded high-end restaurants. And so high-end restaurants, they popped up, right, a few years ago again, because times were flying. Now they're all closing. They're not a sustainable business model.
I would agree with that.
They are 100% ego-driven. And that's cool. Like, hey, if you want to write a check, have a restaurant, cook all the cool food, like, go for it.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, you were talking about all the television and the media and the awards.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, this false reality. Like, this industry is about creating false realities.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We transport people to an experience that they can't have at home, and what you see isn't the reality. I think we got really good at creating this collective industry false reality, where everyone's wants to get into this industry for the thing that they fell in love with as a consumer or as a watcher of TV, and I think that's also why so many restaurants are failing, is because we're trying to chase a false reality, when the reality is, like, you need the economics of a restaurant to work.
Yeah.
So Anything else before moving on? Like, so 2008, it wasn't until 3 years after that you left, or 5 years after.
We
that.
had our son in 2010, and I thought about moving on then, but I was so loyal, and not at a fault. Like, I really cared for that restaurant, and I realized I have a kid, and you know, I needed to do my own thing. I needed to step out on my own. I needed to get out from under Mark and Clark's shadow, which is not fair, because I never felt under their shadow. They didn't certainly make me feel that way. That's the way it was perceived, I think. But they never once made me feel that way. I mean,
Right.
I
think it's how the system's built, that like when you work
it's
as
okay.
a chef
Yeah.
for, I mean, I don't know, like, I mean, I really don't know, but like, I think that it makes sense to want to break off and to have your freedom. I mean, what you did 15 years for one location for that amount of time is unheard of.
Well, I mean,
like, how often do you see that?
Yeah, you don't. And I think, like, so this is going to sound kind of interesting, but or maybe won't make sense, but I don't regret any minute. I don't regret any minute I ever spent at Arrows all those years. I don't regret, like, oh, I should have left 2 years earlier. I should have left a year earlier. Whatever. I don't regret that, but I also don't regret leaving and going to Earth.
So was that a challenge for you leaving?
Yeah, I mean, so Ken Oranger was was like a managing consultant for Earth. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Now I'm leaving to go do this thing again for somebody else. And, but Danielle had left a couple years earlier, and she had worked with Ken, and she had a great relationship with him. And she's like, Justin, I just don't think it's what you think it is. And so I approached it. I met with him. He is, at that point, was hilariously intense. Not like in like a very artistic intense, like really not like at fault, like I'm the God guy and you got to do what I tell you. He never dictated a thing ever at Earth, but his methods for coaxing out of me what I thought that restaurant should be, because it had just opened. It wasn't doing all that great. The food was really good. The two chefs there are incredibly talented. They just wanted to move on. It wasn't their thing. But I had the experience of doing events and weddings and juggling a restaurant and juggling a staff. And so I had a little bit more operational experience is what they needed at that point there. And Danielle and I were a package deal, and safe, because we worked 10 years together at Arrows. So, yeah. So then I started.
What did you think? Because Danielle said it's not what you think it is. What did you think it was?
I knew Ken when he was younger and when he was growing up in his career, and he was intense in a different way then. Ken is now a great friend. to fast forward a million 5-10 years ahead of that, he is a great friend and somebody I truly trust and admire. And he comes into the restaurant and hangs out, and it ended up being an incredible experience. And yeah, I thrived in that environment.
Got it.
Because he put a lot of pressure. Like, forget, like, you're here, you're the chef of Earth. You have no staff, no kitchen staff, no dish staff, nobody. I had Danielle, thank God. But, like, I had to figure it all out on my own.
So you said they were struggling management-wise.
I just think that the chefs that were there, incredibly talented people, they were early on in their careers. And opening a restaurant, running a restaurant are two different ball games. Conceiving and opening a restaurant is incredibly challenging. And
this is the first time you actually didn't open this restaurant, though.
No, but so we would reopen Arrows every year. Think about that.
Right.
And so all of the ancillary restaurants that happened in those years that I was at Arrows, I helped open in a big way.
Yeah.
In an important role. So
pick up your train of thought of opening a restaurant isn't the same as running a restaurant. That's where you're going.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, conceiving a restaurant, everything's going to explode. I had a conversation with one of my partners for Walkers, and I said, yeah. He goes, what do you think? You excited? I said, yeah, I'm just waiting for, like, I don't know, like the water main to break or like the ceiling to fall in. He's like, God, you are such a pessimist. Opening night, Walkers Maine, septic system fails. The septic is overflowing in the parking lot. Hilarious. Can't use the toilets, the whole thing. In the middle of the hardest 100, and I think we did 110 people you've ever done in your life. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew all the planning in the world's not going to stop that from happening. And we had a call afterwards, and he was just like, I can't believe you predicted that. And I was like, that's just how this works.
And that was your experience opening Walkers, not
Walkers. Yeah, but Arrows every year, it sits all winter. Something doesn't work right. Somebody doesn't show up. Like there's always something. And when you're, like summer, winter in Boston, like they didn't have the countertops in. They had to put like temporary countertops in. They're doing that like hours before the place opened. And,
Paint the picture of where Ken Oringer was in his career in 2013.
So he was with Jamie still. He hadn't opened Toro in New York yet. I think he had some of the restaurants in Asia.
The Toro Boston, Toro New York.
He hadn't had Toro in New York yet.
Okay.
But I think he had the ones in Asia. I think he still had La Verdad, which was his Mexican restaurant. He might have had KO still, the KO steak. He was, running a bunch of restaurants.
He was the name around this time.
Yeah. And like, he is probably for me the most gifted chef I think I've ever worked with in person. I mean, he thinks about food in a whole other plane, and that is why that man has been so successful.
Is he I would say the stereotypical or typical chef that is hyper focused on creativity, or did he lack in the systems, processes, management?
So I can't speak to that, but because he was concerned that so he was concerned that Earth on just the function side of it would be challenging. And I remember sitting in his office and I said, that's not what I'm worried about. I know how to run a restaurant. I will run that kitchen. That's not what I'm worried about. And he just never said another word about it.
What about function was concerning?
Like, making the food come out of the kitchen.
Okay.
Training the cooks, functioning, the pacing of the restaurant. I think pace in restaurant is more important than the food, in my opinion. You don't want to sit too long. You don't want to be too fast. Like
the food could be amazing if you're waiting 45 minutes for it.
There's a lot of chefs that are famous for that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do it on those timelines.
Right.
So I understand the minutes.
Right. I mean, thinking about where Chef Oringer was, mostly in cities where there's a higher talent pool to pull from too.
Yeah.
I think being in Maine was probably a challenge to get that, to bring that team together. So leaning on you, reaching to you. To
I
be
mean,
that
so
solution.
Ken was a consultant. So basically he was just there to make sure that whoever was in charge had good pedigree. And
so he didn't own the restaurant.
No.
Okay.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Yeah, I mean, he never we had to do everything else on our own. He was just like a consultant.
Got it.
And I'm sure Danielle spent a lot of time with him with building the beverage program at Earth, because at that point at what was it called? Oh, good Lord, he's gonna kill me.
Is this one of his restaurants?
Yeah, it was. Now it's Uni. It was. Sorry, Ken. I'm having a blank. But anyways, sort of the gold standard of fine dining in Boston, Clio, and Clio had this crazy beverage program. I mean, this is 2012, right? He had like centrifuges and all this crazy stuff they're using to make drinks. Like, think about that. That's 15 years ago.
Way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, 13 years ago. So she spent a lot of time with him with that, and I don't know, it's like if you just relax and want to learn and not try to prove yourself all of the time and just listen, and this is a great Danielle quote, just listen. Do the listening, not the talking. And, you know, she is so right in that. You can learn so much more just by not saying a word.
First seek to understand, then seek to be understood. Go listen to the first episode I did with Chef Walker. I listened to it on the way here. It was painful. I was talking way too much. I was like, oh my God, man, you come a long way. But yeah, 100% first seek to understand. Get the data, get the information so you can make a better decision or a better plan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think I made any missteps in my career. I think I did all the things right. I learned every minute of every one of those years, and I think that's the important part.
So Earth was at Hidden Pond, a hotel, right? This is the first time you had to deal with something like that.
Yeah,
New
so that
challenge.
was interesting. Yeah.
So what did you learn about that?
I mean, I learned that that it's a challenging environment for the hotel side. You know, people want what they want when they want it, and it's really hard to function that. You know, like I used to joke around about like the cheese platters. Like, you know, it's like we're just Earth wasn't that. You know, the vision that I had for Earth was what Earth became. We weren't the chocolate covered strawberry providing 24/7 type restaurant, and I think that was tough on the hotel, but it wasn't set up for it. I mean, the kitchen was very, very small and initially, but I did learn how to do that. I think we got a little better at it, but I see it a little bit more clearly now. I went to a hotel in Mexico last year, and I was blown away by how they offered and what they offered. Again, it was a much smaller, less complicated type place than Hidden Pond was, but I was like, oh, I wish I would have stayed in this hotel in those years. I think I might have understood more of what the guest really kind of needs and wants.
Got it.
Yeah, maybe the next stage of our career we'll do it again. We'll see.
So how many seats was Arrows? Approximately
110, I think.
110?
Maybe 130. I can't remember.
How many seats was Earth?
Jesus, I don't know.
Approximately.
It was bigger. 150, I think.
150.
Yeah.
You're at 125 today, kind of splitting the difference.
Yeah.
Any other lessons in terms of what you learned at Earth that you think shaped who you are today as a restaurateur?
Yeah. So Earth was that period of time where interesting flavors, kind of confusing flavors were really popular. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed making things very unique. I enjoyed putting lots and lots of effort and time into each little component. It wasn't fussy food, but it was complicated flavor-wise. And that's what I thought Walkers would be. And it wasn't. It was just that was a snapshot in time.
Was it profitable?
Earth?
Yeah.
So the P&L we saw, it did look profitable. I don't think we didn't see all the real estate stuff. We didn't see everything.
Well, it's also a hotel. Which
I think it did. They were
different.
thrilled with it. Listen,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm still, cordial with all the partners, with a lot of people that still work there. I think we worked really hard there. We did a very good job for them. I don't think anybody can deny that. Yeah, I mean,
was there a struggle for you during this time?
No, I mean, the food we were trying to do was so incredibly challenging. Sous chefs, cooks worked so hard. I worked so hard. It was not even remotely sustainable, and certainly I don't think would ever be possible today.
What made it possible then that doesn't make it possible today?
I think it was, there was a lot of people that really wanted me to succeed on my own. I had a lot of carryover staff from the Arrows days. I still have people that have worked in those days that have worked here. Matt, obviously, Powder's been with me through all of this. We often say everybody should have worked at Earth, because it was a great working environment. There was zero issues. Everybody worked incredibly hard. Nobody complained. Nobody was making a ton of money, but they wanted to be there and they wanted to do it, and it gelled like really well. It just wasn't really sustainable,
Yeah.
And the
So
food was so complicated.
when you say not sustainable, obviously your food was sustainable, but the business model,
No.
cost of labor,
No, I think business-wise it was really sustainable.
wasn't sustainable.
You can't. Well, we pay cooks a lot more money now. We had a decent amount of cooks there. Not in the initial times, but in the last couple of years, we had enough staff to make it work well.
Work-life balance sustainable.
Yeah, they just forget it. Like you had to put in 16-hour days every day at least.
Yeah. How many years did you do this?
That was 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. And I never would have left if it wasn't for this. I really enjoyed it there.
So yeah, let's get to it, man. And I think this is going to be more than a 2-hour long conversation. It might go a little longer if that's okay.
No
with
worries,
you,
it's
because
fine.
I'm loving this
Yeah,
and
it's all good.
this gold.
Well,
So
there's a lot of years here.
yeah, man, we're going to unpackage a lot
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So yeah, take me to 5 years in, like what was going on? Like,
Well, we wanted recognition. Danielle and I both really wanted recognition, and we felt we needed to own the business in order to make that happen.
do you think it's harder to get recognition at a hotel restaurant?
Yes.
Why?
I think that the press, I don't know if that's true today because I don't follow it that much, but
It's hard to stand on your own without being under the shadow again.
yeah, but
under
you
the
have to
shadow of
realize,
something.
like, if there's great food coming out of a hotel in Kennebunkport, Maine, there's people that are making that happen. It's not like it's easier because they've got a hotel behind them and money behind them. Forget that. You know what I mean? Like, that's not true at all. Like, we were responsible for making money. We wrote budgets at Earth and in Kennebunkport Resort Collection. We had budgets to follow. We had projections to follow. We had to make. I mean, I was like, when we get our P&Ls, I'd get a little nervous. It was. Yeah, I don't know why. I think the press thinks the little mom and pop with the cutesy little restaurant is sort of the definition of restaurants in America.
Yeah.
But then on the same side, they'll say, oh, they're doing this 401ks and this sort of crap and, extra, days off and paid time off and all these sort of things, which you should be able to offer, but you need to do millions of dollars a year to make that happen for people, to make a sustainable business. So you've got maybe an owner or two that are killing themselves to provide this to a business that isn't even making money.
Right.
But the press eats it up.
Yeah, dude, you're going. I say all the time, marketing is the bane of human existence, because it just takes good things and in order to make money doing it, just when the media gets involved, when the press gets involved, like you have to factor that into what you do, and it almost always pulls you off of what we've been discussing. Is what matters is the relationships, is the providing opportunity to other people, is the putting the energy into doing something that you want to do, that it resonates with you, not what the trends are in the industry right now.
I remember when we made we started. I was very lucky at Earth. We had a great PR firm. Danielle and I and the marketing team there managed them. And it costs a lot of money. And I took that very seriously because they were investing a lot of money into that. And we took out of it, I think, as much as we possibly could. When we opened Walkers, we were initially with the same PR firm, and it was hugely expensive. They gave us an incredible deal. They were very great. They were very amenable to making it work, but it was a lot of money. And I answered a call one time about, what are you doing with oysters? And I was like, I don't know what I said. And they're like, well, can you put any of those sauces in a perfume bottle? I was like, what? Well, the story is about this chef and these chefs in Washington, D.C. that are doing like these spritzes on oysters. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what that is. And then we had sort of at that point, we're thinking about not having a PR firm. And I was like, I don't ever want to answer another call like that ever again for the rest of my life. That is not who I am. That is not what I want to be. Give me a break. Just to be in a magazine somewhere, like, forget it. And I was like, that's what this is. And it really clicked for me then, like, wow, that's really what this is. And yeah, I just
remember that conversation
on the business.
Remember that conversation we had before we got started?
Yeah. I mean, do what you do. Like, listen, if you want to do that, we all did it. When we were young. If you want to do that, then do it. It's your money.
Right.
Like, it's your prerogative. Nobody cares.
So what happened in 2017 or 16 that pulled you out of Earth and brought you in this direction?
At that point, we had a lot of stuff going on. They wanted to do some more restaurants at KRC, and they wanted us involved in that.
What's KRC?
Kennebunkport Resort Collection. The group that, I don't know if they still call it that, but it's the group that managed all of those hotels and restaurants. And there was that sort of on the table. Another thing that will remain nameless was on the table at the same time, that we weren't really seriously considering, but it was on the table. And then Cara DioGuardi, who at that point was a York local, who as American Idol judge, I think 2 seasons.
Okay.
Came to Walkers, left us a note. This place is amazing. I want you to do this PR thing at my house with this writer from Maine. And
So Walkers is open at this point.
sorry, no, that was at Earth.
Okay.
I still say it took me years to stop calling in orders for arrows. But anyways, so we were still at Earth, kind of had these other things on the table. We're looking for the next step maybe. But still really happy with where we were.
So she wrote you this note.
She wrote a note, and I was like, holy crap, because I always respected her a lot on the show because she was like a real singer-songwriter, and that was when the show's heyday. You know what I mean? That's Simon Cowell, the whole deal. And so it was like, wow, this person, thinks this is good. Like, you got to be impressed by that, right? So we did this little thing at her house, and, I'm like, oh, my God. I walk into her house, and I'm supposed to do this TV show, and she just sits down at her kitchen counter and says, she thought we owned Earth, and I was like, no. She said, why? And I said, well, financially, restaurant chefs and GMs don't make enough really to afford to do a restaurant. She's like, would you ever want your own restaurant? And I was like, yeah, we would consider it. And then that was like, you're like, yeah. You know how many times I've been told that? I mean, I got an email like 6 hours later from her. And so that got the ball rolling. We brought in, she helped bring in some other partners. And initially we were going to build Walkers. We spent months working on this great local architect, on a building, and we were going to do it. The numbers were a little scary. They weren't as scared of them as I was, because I was like, wow, we got to do a lot of revenue to.
Right.
And then this Cape Neddick Inn, which we had driven by a million times, we never went to, was here and for sale, and that started to look a lot more attractive.
So this was an inn.
No, it was a hotel. It was a restaurant.
Okay.
Years I forget, in the 60s or 50s, I think it had like boarding involved with it, but like it always had been kind of a neat restaurant. And then it went through some kind of ownership changes and became sort of like a run-of-the-mill kind of Maine-esque type restaurant. But the bones were here. It had fireplaces, it had a big kitchen, but the problem was that happened really fast. So we were still committed to Earth, and this happened like really fast, and we didn't want to let the staff go, so we kept it open. So think about that for a second. So we're working up in Kennebunkport. We now own a restaurant that's operating under a different name with chefs and cooks and dishwashers and the whole deal. That's incredibly volatile because they are immediately something's gonna happen eventually. Yeah. Obviously, we're not gonna just own.
There's no
Cape
way you
Neddick
can be
in.
as on top of it when you're pulled in different directions.
Yeah. So, we gave notice to. We gave a 6-month notice to the Kennebunkport Resort Collection.
When did you give that notice?
The day we closed. I think it was like May.
The day you closed on this space.
Yeah.
So
the minute it
6
closed.
months.
The minute it closed. Once it closed, and I was actually in California. Danielle was here. We had 2 phone calls to make separately, before any news could possibly get out. And we were committed to the season. We actually had a contract that.
Who were those phone calls to?
Mr. Granitz, who was a partner in the whole company, and then
at the Kennebunkport
Resort Collection. And he's someone that obviously respected a lot, still really good friends with, amazing man. And Danielle called the general manager of the whole thing.
6 months notice.
We were like, we're committed. So we wrote. So Danielle and I spent tens of thousands on a contract that protected us and our partners. So none of us had to do anything we didn't want to do.
Partnership agreement.
Yeah. So it was to the point of which Walkers opened. It was so if our partners got cold feet, and we'd already given notice, there was a financial commitment on their end, and we didn't have to leave Hidden Pond for any reason, unless we wanted to and initiated that on our own. We couldn't be forced
out of it.
Correct, because we wanted to do.
You need a backup plan.
We wanted to fulfill our commitment and do the responsible thing. It was a seasonal business. We gave them tons of notice. Yeah.
But also, don't get into anything if you don't know how you're going to get out of it. So,
honestly, that was Kara. Like, she was like, "You guys need to protect yourselves." I mean, she is a smart woman, and
that's a great way. If your partner is telling you this to look out for you, that's a good sign in the partner.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm curious about, very early on in this conversation, you said that you just worked all the time. All you were doing was working. You were living in a mental.
Yeah, a men's home.
Like
a man's home.
A man's home. Your
I don't
rent
know
was dirt cheap.
how
much money did you put away?
I always had this goal of keeping $10,000 in my checking account.
That's awesome.
In those days, and life was simple. You know, I had a car payment, this little car, whatever, and I didn't do much. I didn't buy expensive things, and I just made that work. You know,
I mean, I'm thinking like because it sounds like all you did was work for like 20 years.
Yeah.
You weren't making a ton of money.
Nope.
I mean, once you started getting the executive chef role, I'm imagining you were doing better.
So I was doing fine.
Right. Enough to be putting money away if all you're doing
In
is
that
working.
stage of my life, it worked. It would not work now.
Right.
But
well, you have a home, you have children.
Yep.
But back then you didn't have these things. I mean, I guess like,
But I put myself in that position. You know, that's the thing. I consciously, from when I was a teenager, put myself in that position where I was like, I'm not going to have to go work at the Westin to make ends meet so I can have the fancy truck or whatever. You know what I mean? Or
I think half of success in this industry isn't about earning the money. It's about stopping the bleeding and getting as lean as possible in your personal life, so you can choose to have the professional life you want.
Yeah, you need the time.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
So, I mean, you just strike me as a very fiscally responsible individual.
I try to be. You know, my dad passed in 2006. I never spent a dime until he passed, and I was like, I've got to live my life a little bit here. You know, I've got to. I remember I was always into cycling, and then I stopped. And I remember I bought a new bike for $800, and those who know me now know that I've grown since then. But I remember like kind of struggling with the idea of spending that much money on a bicycle to get back into it. And it was watching my dad pass, and the last several months of his life, I was like, and he was 53 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, you know, I got to start living a little bit. I don't regret that one bit. So I'm less fiscally responsible than I used to be.
And that happened around what? When?
That was 05. Oh, he died in 06.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. So you started living a little more. But I guess what I'm trying to find out is, when you came into this partnership, did you have skin in the game? Did you put money into the pot?
No. So we didn't. So the Arrows years were lean when we had a kid. I did much better at Hidden Pond, but we had, you know, $1,600 a month childcare. You know, is that period of time where you struggle with all of those bills.
2 working parents.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that was the caveat, right? I didn't need to make that decision.
Right.
I didn't need to put myself in I didn't need to put myself in a financial situation to struggle for any reason.
Well, I think one of the paths you can take is the path you took, where you put the equity into yourself. You're the asset. You're the value. You're the draw. Yeah. You're worth putting money into. So you can go out and, you know, put your own money into it and have higher risk, or you can become a person of value and have people throw money at you because you're a good investment.
Yeah, I mean, I think
not only your talent, but your work ethic. And
I think, you know, one of my other partners, John Roth, who, you know, is another a person I respect a great deal. He said, bet on yourself, you know, and I think that's a good thing to think about. You know, bet on yourself to achieve those things that you want to achieve, you know, and we're not even to COVID yet in this discussion, you know, and Walkers, you know, you need to put in time. You need to be, you know, patient, and, you know, I think the rest is history there.
Yeah. What are the challenges? I mean, obviously we identified the additional cost to build out a hearth and to put in, you know, the hood system that can live fire is a different game when it comes to hood systems.
Crazy.
Yeah. How much ballpark? What should you budget for a hood if you want to do live fire?
Oh God, I can't remember. So I'm trying to remember. I used to know like price per foot. That hood was $100. That hood was like 4 or 5 times more expensive per foot than a traditional Ansel hood.
Everybody wants to do live fire until you realize. I think there is something to be said about live fire if your business model and your branding revolves around it. But it comes with a lot of challenges that I don't. I mean,
we have the same hoods that have been in this building for God knows how long, probably since the 80s. We have the same saute pans. We moved around the countertops 1,000 times. The refrigeration that was here was still here. Every spoon, you know, we spent no money except for on that hearth.
Yeah. What other things should you be aware of beyond the cost of just getting it built out with the hood systems for the regulations and the actual cost of the hearth itself?
Well, you definitely have to have a generator, because if that stops working, which it has, full bore, with an entire restaurant full of people, you're in trouble real quick. So we have this building came with a backup generator. It'll always have to have a backup generator. So you know, even those minutes, it's probably not even a minute where you flick over from power to generator is terrifying.
Yeah. What about cost of wood?
I mean, I don't know what we spend anymore. Honestly, it's substantial.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even remember now. We use a cord every 6 days of operation. So, yeah, I mean, it's substantial.
What's a cord going for these days?
$300.
Okay. So an additional $300 a week, so $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is some people's rent,
Yeah.
you know, depending on where you are. The skill of having somebody who knows what they're doing with live fire, because that's not, you don't just cook over it, you got to manage a fire.
I mean, we do some grilling, if you will, but it's mostly stuff in pans on the coals, and like, it's pretty cool. I mean,
it's cool.
It's
Don't
what
get me wrong.
I always wanted.
It's sexy.
I wish I was 20 years younger and could. I mean, I've worked the line several months here.
Who doesn't like working with live
periods.
fire?
Yeah.
There's like a primal thing there.
It's not easy though. Like,
it's a skilled position.
Yeah, and the guys and girls that have worked here, I mean, we have a couple gentlemen that work here now they're just so good at it. They don't realize how good they are at it.
What's that learning curve like? The cost of training.
It's not terrible. I mean, you know, Matt and I, you know what we're doing, and so, you know, it's all about how you set up the dishes too. So a lot of my thought goes into the production of the dish, also the function of how you put it out. If there's no ovens over there, you think, oh well, that's no big deal. Try to heat anything. It's got to be done over that live fire somehow.
Yeah.
So there's that challenge. So the food is different because of that. You're not making sauces to order. You're not, you know, it's a thing. It's, you know, the food is definitely a lot different, but I'll tell you, you don't realize until you eat the food, you know, just simple things like we have a pork dish that's on the menu now, pork chop. It's probably always stay on the menu. It's one of those dishes that'll never leave. And those mashed potatoes just sit in a pot in front of the hearth, right, all night long, and they get batched in there, and they taste like so authentic. It's why the dish is so popular. I think people forget the pork chop. It's that you catch that lick of wood on things. It's not smoky. It's not smoked. It's just sort of that campfire-y. You know how you smell it when you go camping? Yeah. It's like that.
I mean, it creates to the experience. Like I walk in this place, it's the smell.
Yeah. I don't smell it anymore, but yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah.
It's part of the experience. It takes you to. I think there's something that I think we forget how closely tied to food we are from like an evolutionary standpoint of like we literally evolved into what we are because of our ability to cook food, to come around a fire. There's a draw there that is primal. You know, there's a lot of arguments that like literally like hunting is how we developed like the scientific method, like because you had to be able to make a prediction. You had to study a subject. You had to predict it, learn its behaviors, figure out where it's going and the patterns, and like make a hypothesis and like see if it worked. Did you trap it? Did you get it? And then like that over time, okay, now we're cooking, chemistry, right? Now we're farming, botany. Yeah, of course. You know, so it's like it is who we are and what we do. And I think it's so crazy today that we look at food as literally it is a commodity. Living things are organized next to silver, gold, coal. You know what I mean? It's crazy how detached from food we've gotten, and that like that part, it's like food is literally a part of our DNA. It's crazy. Anyway, I digress. So I think there's definitely appeal there from the consumer. Would you, knowing what you know now in terms of live fire, would you maybe have like done it from scratch, building like the actual, you have like the brick, right? Would you maybe work with somebody like Grills by Demont where they like?
No.
Okay.
So that was what I didn't want to do.
Why is that?
Well, I wanted it to be like a hearth.
Okay.
Like that goes all the way to the basement. That is no joke. That's not just sitting on top of the floor. Matt and I were under that basement. We cut a hole in the floor. Him and I went down there and built the forms and put the rebar in. And we had masons come in and pour concrete, and that's blocked all the way from the basement, from the bottom of the building. So no, that's exactly what I wanted it to be. I would have loved the idea of stone instead, but like that's more practical. I wouldn't go that route. I never like the grill work stuff, the stainless steel I never wanted, because you can just roll those pieces of equipment under a hood and go for it.
Well, that's what I was thinking, the practicality of it, or like the module, module, like features.
Because you could change things in and out, and this and that.
For
so it was
specials.
just a big, deep hearth. The grill units that we use are from NorCal Oven Works, and they make a ton of different stuff. We put that wood stove in there a few years ago. When we opened from COVID. We used to have a plancha in the middle that was challenging to use, so we thought an oven type thing would be really cool. It actually doesn't work as good as you think it does, but we used to top it to sear stuff. We cooked foie gras on it one summer. You find creative ways to cook. It's really fun to watch different cooks, kind of their style and how they do it. It works really well.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, once you learn how to do it, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now is where I kind of try to get into like the economics of your business and like learning like what has it been like? So the first year you opened, you're now almost 8 years in. Has it been peaks and valleys? Have you fine-tuned? Have you evolved? Has business like increased or like slowed?
So I don't look at the metrics as close as I probably should. I don't know customer count. Again, that's a Danielle thing. She lets me know when it's one way or the other. Revenue wise, we came in, we opened very low price points, like crazy low, and it was hard on the business.
Was the strategy behind that?
Yeah, the strategy really was, I didn't want to be expensive. I knew we were going to be perceived as expensive because of our sort of pedigree, if you will, arrows to earth. And I wanted to offer it as a value, and I was hoping the volume would take care of the rest. And it did an okay job of it, but we were like crazy low. So we, after year one, realized we need to raise price a little bit. We started doing a little bit of events. That helped. And then I'm just seeing if I'm saying this right. Yeah, so year 3 was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So year 3 we have real deal weddings booked. A bunch of weddings. I forget how many. I don't know. Nothing like what we do now, but a lot more than we had been doing. And then COVID happened. So then we had a fire. So the state shut us down. I think we closed a week because we thought we had back in those days, we thought we had a positive case, so one of those deals. This is before masks or any of that. This is very early on. And then we did takeout for a week, me and Danielle, and got absolutely annihilated. And that was one of those calls I had with my partners. And I was like, we have all this food there. We should do something with it. And they're like, we had already shut down operations. We burnt a bunch of cash to pay off our vendors. Danielle and I ceased to make an income. We took care of insurances for some of our longtime employees. We shut down. So I was like, I got to make money personally. So I was like, let's sell off the food that we have. And so they were like, nobody's going to want takeout, but give it a try. And again, obviously the rest is history there.
I don't know the history.
Well, the history was takeout became a thing.
Yeah.
I remember, me and Dave Vargas and a couple other people were like doing the same thing, like having nights where you did $300 in revenue and this sort of crap. And like, I think I just was like, we have to stick with it.
So after COVID, you started doing takeout more regularly.
This was like February of 2020. So right after the state shut us down.
So when you say stick with it, you mean like short term to like keep
everybody. One of my partner's career jobs was to know in the financial world, he was briefed to understand the situation more than the press was telling us. So he laid it out. You're going to be down for 2 years. The vaccine's going to come online when it did. This is going to be the new normal. We're not going to reopen in 3 months or whatever the government said. I can't remember what it was. So a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, we'll just close and reopen in a month and a half." And like, he was like, "That's never going to happen. This is how this is going to go."
Yeah, I remember somebody. I think Dean Smalls from Synergy Consultants told me that.
Yes.
And I was like, "Shh."
Yeah. So
it's like, this is going to be 2 years. I was like, I want to get back on the road.
Yeah. So I was like, this is going to be the new thing.
Yeah.
So we got annihilated. Like
annihilated in a good way.
Yeah, in a great way.
Yeah.
And that was when like the weird tipping thing started. Like Danielle's like, there's so much gratuity here. We don't even know what to do with it because we're not allowed to take it because we're not
on the to-go orders.
We're not W-2 employees, so we can't take that
right.
money. And so we operated a week, got totally destroyed. I worked 7 days a week. My son was tiny at the time, and he would sit out here in the bar and alert us when people came in. People came in the building to pick up the food. Like we had no idea what we were doing. And I just got destroyed. And then so we're like, we could bring Matt back on, pay him his full ride.
Off the gratuity?
Yeah. And yeah, we could probably pay him off the gratuity. So that was about to happen like the next week. And I was in here prepping. I was making pasta and doing stuff, and I heard some crashing upstairs. And I looked across the kitchen. I was cooking chickens on the hearth. I look across the kitchen. I see this kind of hazy smoke. And I ran outside, looked back up the building, and every single chimney was leaking past the flashing, like billowing smoke.
Got it.
Black smoke. And I shut the propane off, called 911, and it did 7 figures worth of damage to the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Insurance cover it?
So the insurance doesn't cover it. It eventually did, but it took over a year. So we were still incomeless now, completely incomeless.
How far into the pandemic was this?
This was April. This was April Fool's Day.
Okay.
Actually.
Irony.
So my partners were amazing. It was a really hard period for us personally. We figured it out personally. We burnt some cash that we had. We ended up having a really great summer. We did a lot of camping with our son. We found ways to survive. It wasn't, I paid every car payment. We had we waited 10 years to buy cars. We both had just bought cars. I made that happen. We both made that happen. We got through it. And then the day after the fire, they wanted us to get operating because the insurance company doesn't want to pay the loss of business. The problem is
that's what I was curious
Walkers
about.
was 2 years old at that point, so it wasn't really making money. So like you couldn't like, oh, we made 100,000 this month and 100,000 that month and 50,000 this month, and there was none of that.
You were still in the building
Yeah,
phase.
we were still just starting. So, so basically, yeah, we just so they said we want you to operate, and the gentleman that owns Anthony's Food Shop, Mark, called me and said, I want you to take over my space rent free up by Mr. Mike's in York here. You can have it for no rent. You don't have to pay anything, nothing. I'll pay all the utilities. You just go in there and operate. I feel so bad.
They wanted us to operate, being the community?
The insurance company
Okay.
wants you to operate, so they don't have to pay that loss of business.
Got it. So
Right.
they're trying to get you back to work.
Correct. So I had the idea. I said, well, what happens if we bought like a concession trail, like a food truck type thing, and then we buy that because they were giving you money for rent. We buy that and we use that as a restaurant. And the insurance company was like, actually, we just did that. They did that for some hotel or something, and they're like, yeah, we'll do that. But the problem was, this
Is that what's
COVID.
sitting outside right now?
Yeah, so that that was like early, like the middle of April, we wrote a check, and we didn't get it till the end of August. So we got it. We actually did some weddings with it, believe it or not. New Hampshire was wide open. It was terrifying. Nobody got sick. Everything was fine. We had masks and the whole shields and all that crap. We put some money in the bank, and then we started operating it as a restaurant outside.
Here?
Yeah, and it was so hard. I always dreamed of having a hot dog truck, and I'll tell you, no way.
What were you doing out of that?
Like real food.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's set up like a restaurant in there. Actually, it's not really set up like a production
It's
kitchen.
more of just a kitchen.
It's like a regular, like
Okay.
a mini little restaurant kitchen.
How much volume were you doing out of that?
I don't remember, but revenue wise, but I think we did 6,000 or 7,000 on like New Year's Eve and things
Oh, wow.
like that. But I'll tell you, that's a lot. When you figure we were selling things for like $13, it's a lot of business.
Yeah.
So we did this thing. The holidays happened. We thought we'd bring back Walker's food, and that was kind of okay for a minute. Then it died off, and then the holidays came. Like Thanksgiving came, and then Christmas, and then all these holidays sort of happened. So we kept having to change the menu. Every time we would change the menu, we'd see a spike in business. So of New Year's Eve, I was like, we're not going to serve weird, fancy food. What do people eat on New Year's Eve? I have no idea. And Matt was like, you can't get an order in for Chinese food for like a week. Like you have to pre-order. All right, let's do Chinese food. But we're just going to do Cantonese Chinese food. And we got annihilated. Like we shut the computer off within a half an hour of opening. We were completely sold out.
Wow.
For hours.
Wow.
And it was life-changingly busy and so incredibly challenging.
Was it literally life-changingly busy? Like, did you change how you did things going forward?
Yeah,
because
like
of it?
I'm not exaggerating. Like it was, I thought I'd seen everything. Like I had never seen anything like that in my life. I've never felt so scared in a service, so helpless than I felt.
What I'm curious about, like, we know the story of COVID, and you have a very unique story around how things went with the fire and everything. But what I'm curious about, when things open back up, the year is 2022,
Yeah.
you're back to full scale, full bore. Do you do business differently because of it?
Yeah, so that's what I was getting to. So we did the Chinese food thing, and then we realized if we changed the menu every week, brand new, we would continue to get more and more and more business, and the thing just grew. What Danielle said to me was, I don't know any of these people.
Meaning,
Specifically on the Chinese food. So, she works the front. She knows all the faces. She knows all the names. And we had a massive amount of support from our regular guests. Like every day they would come and get food practice. It was ridiculous. They were so supportive. She knew those people. But as soon as you start doing crab rangoons for $12, you're suddenly now seeing people you've never seen before in Walkers, Maine. And that clicked in my head. That was the click. That was the change. When we reopen Walkers, we're changing what we do. We're going to make the food more approachable. We are going to think about those people. That's what we're going to do.
So,
and that changed our business like massively.
Give me an example of what the food was before without getting
I
too
would
into
never
detail.
do something like linguine and clams.
Okay.
Right? So if the dish existed, like pasta bolognese, chicken piccata. Like I was pulling out all this stuff in the food truck, and Matt's young, so he doesn't know any of this stuff. Like back in those days, we cooked like cutlets and this sort of stuff in New York. Like people were going crazy for that because they hadn't seen it ever in 20, 30 years. And I was just racking my brains trying to figure out what to do. And so that's the type of food we do now. Now you actually you can look at the menu and say, oh, I know what that is. I love chicken piccata.
Yeah.
I would never do anything like that before.
So before it was more highbrow, like creative.
It was just more creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it changed the business.
So now you're focusing on the market and what the market wants, what the market feels comfortable with.
Yeah, and focusing on what I like. Like, it's okay. We did creative food from 2010 to 2016, and that was a thing.
Well,
it's not a thing
2016, well, you opened here 2017.
So like
you're
that was
continuing
Earth Days.
along those veins.
I was, and it was fine, and it did okay, and it did fine, but like it wasn't what it is now.
I think there was this surge 2007 on where everybody across the country and the world was like, we have this portal across with the iPhone, we can see what everyone's doing, and there are like all these trends, and like who can out create each other.
Yeah.
And there was
Yep.
like this like,
Yep.
but I think now people just want like approachable food that is within budget.
And you see it. You just see it every night. You see
Right.
these people come in. They can look at the menu. They can understand what it is. It makes sense.
Have you heard of? Sorry, go ahead.
They have money. Like
you heard
those people have plenty of money. You know what I mean?
Have you heard of Tuckerman's? Not Tuckerman's. Sorry. Tuckaway Tavern.
Yes.
In New Hampshire.
Yeah, I haven't been though.
Place has a line out the door on a Tuesday at 3:00.
Yeah.
The food is delicious. Bobby Marcotte is just doing very approachable, blue collar,
Yeah.
value driven food. And it's like they kill it. It's not like I don't want to like devalue and like say what he's doing isn't talent, but like it's very approachable. I mean, it's pork chops, it's mac and cheese, but it's elevated, but it's like I'm hearing a similarity in what you're doing now, similar to that. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, it just changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
I use my skills, my cooking skills and my creative skills to be creative with, product placement, different cuts of chicken and meat and fish. And I get the value I get out of it is using that instead of like trying to confuse people. Now I'm using my brain power to make it more approachable,
right.
Use a cut that maybe you wouldn't normally use, and use some cooking technique that makes it better.
Right. It kind of reminds me of like fusion of like meats and potato married with new age like creativity, but still keeping it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some stuff that's like, we don't discuss sort of the kind of esoteric ingredients or technique that we use. There is a little bit of that, but you don't see it on the menu, and you just eat it, and you're like, why is this the way it is? And you don't necessarily need to know.
Right.
Again, it's like, yeah, it's sort of just like, just think about what you want to eat. What do you eat? If the food you eat at home is not the food you're serving in your restaurant, you might want to rethink what you're doing.
So I want to protect your privacy because you need to give us the actual numbers of the revenue you're
Yeah.
doing today. But 2019, March 2019 to 2020 March, how much percent growth would you say you went to from then to, was 2022 your peak or 2023 your peak?
That's probably 40%.
40% increase in revenue.
Yeah.
Do you think that had a lot to do with the shift in the menu?
Yeah, I mean, we raised price, which we had carte blanche after COVID. to do, so that helped. Volume really kind of stayed the same. I mean, it's only can do so many people, and we've always been pretty busy. It's the event side, but the event side is incredibly hard. I mean, I work, and again, I do not promote this, and I don't. I just know what I have to do, but I worked from, I don't know, probably the beginning of June until the middle of October, and I'm not exaggerating. I took 2 days off.
Wow.
I was in here on days off when the place was closed. The other thing we learned was you can be open 5 days a week.
I mean, eventually you're going to have to learn how to remove yourself from the business.
Well, I don't think you can. I think you do it to that level. That's what makes it successful. That's why people can afford to buy homes. That's why, another thing I'd like to talk about in a minute that we're able to do for our staff, like it takes revenue to afford those things.
Insurance? No.
Oh. Something kind of a little bit cooler than that.
Okay.
Maybe not as cool, but way more romantic. But anyways, so you just have to put the time in. And the event side makes it incredibly challenging.
Right.
On the work-life balance thing for our staff, I take all of the lion's share of the workload myself. I don't require people to do 6-day weeks. I don't require 7-day weeks. They do their job. They're paid for their job. I put in the extra time. I put in the extra effort to make the business successful.
Got it.
Because we can do weddings. We do weddings with a totally ancillary staff.
Yeah.
That don't work here.
Did I hear that you're doing less events in catering today than you were in the past?
No.
You're doing more now?
A massive amount more.
What percentage of your your marketing mix is a la carte versus catering in private events?
You mean like
or
revenue?
The plated like dine-in restaurant versus your
the
total,
restaurant's always operating.
Well, yeah, but
we don't do the weddings here.
Yes, but in terms of the business you're doing, the total revenue you're producing, what percentage of that comes from dine-in versus private events versus catering?
I think if you group private events in with catering, it's probably a little less than a third.
Okay, so about 33% of your total revenue comes from. That's a huge chunk.
Yeah, and that's profitable revenue.
Yeah, much more profitable. Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the big things I'm picking up on is you pivoted your menu to be more approachable. If I'm
it's
putting
easier for the cooks to produce.
I was also going to say that.
It's way easier for the cooks when you're like, I can't even, the amount it changed the place is just it's just astronomical. I mean, everybody likes what they're cooking. They enjoy the food. They're not confused. They don't feel inadequate because they can't figure it out, like all this sort of stuff. It's just way easier. It's way better. It's what offers that balance.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also what I try to get into. Like we talk about, I think a lot of the other media that exists around the restaurant industry is around the flash in the pan, right? And I think we need to talk more about, okay, what actually works economically. Yeah. Your cost of goods may be going down too.
Yeah. I mean, the cost of labor's gone up, but the cost of goods goes down and revenue goes up. And if you do enough revenue and enough volume, there's profit. And now my partners are happy.
You also, you increase your catering and private events sales. You also, you start charging more.
Yeah, not astronomically more, but yeah.
Well, I'm curious about that. As a restaurateur, I mean, you were managing P&Ls with Pond or Earth at Hidden Pond. Are you drilling down with like costing and measuring in inventory? Are you really starting to like go deeper into that vertical?
So we don't back out inventory. It's sort of a revolving door of inventory. So you just have to know, like for instance, like I spent a bunch of money the end of November that we're not going to see revenue for, the beginning of this next month. Right. Okay. So like that happens. I try to avoid that just to make the P&L look cleaner, but like, it doesn't matter. Right. But we don't have cash flow problems. So we just deal with it.
In terms of like costing and purchasing.
Yeah.
I
look at every single thing.
Are you now like really reverse engineering down to the gram? Like this is what this plate costs, and like we want to make 15% profit on this, so like this is what we have to charge. Or are you just kind of saying like we should charge this?
I mean, it's a multiple. So again, that's where the 27 years of working really hard, the technique, the ability to charge a premium for something that maybe the next guy can't.
When you say it's a multiple, what do you mean? Is it like a bunch of things?
How many times we mark up the piece. So, if you're let's say if you want to run let's say you want to run a 30% food cost on a $30 entree, you have $10 to spend ish on the protein.
Got it.
Right? So that's not
like rule of thumb.
That's not a sustainable percentage.
Okay.
there is a mix of menus, so everybody knows like appetizers are a higher profit margin, but they're a lower dollar figure. There's a whole science to it, but creating something from nothing is what you need to think about.
Yeah.
But giving value where you can. Like serving chicken thighs, for instance, like you can offer a great value for
so
somebody.
good.
Yeah,
I don't know why the chicken thigh is so cheap.
And you can charge less money. And that's the other thing. Like, I can't tell you how many times, even Danielle, please do a steak. No, I refuse, because it's going to be $60. I'm not doing that. Like,
right.
you can't give on the margin.
Right.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
And if you see restaurants, it's like the whole all you can eat shrimp thing that Red Lobster did and to put them bankrupt. Like, you just can't do that to your business.
I'd take a chicken thigh over a breast any
and then
day.
you can
Best cut of
offer
meat.
it at a good value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that's using cooking skills and technique and purchasing and being smart. You can offer your guests a great value.
Yeah. So in terms of like prime costs, can we get into some of those numbers?
Sure.
And like, so cost of labor, percentage, cost of goods, like what is your prime cost?
Jeez. I mean,
this is the stuff my listeners like go deeper into this sort of thing.
yeah.
And I'll be honest,
I mean,
like I'm learning this
trying
stuff
to
too.
think. I'm gonna not lie here. Like on the labor side, there's a number that cooks want to make, and it's a big number. And I say, and as long as I can keep the volume up with events and keep the restaurant busy enough, we can afford it. So I don't look at that as the place where I'm going to save money. The food cost side, though, I do. And I control all of the ordering. Sort of counterintuitive to what I learned in the beginning of my career, where I was the 14-year-old doing the ordering. It's where you can make or break yourself. Again, this all stems around your willingness to work and do events and ancillary stuff while your restaurant is open, and also, having the honest talk with the cooks. Like, I can pay this number, but we're not going to have prep cooks. Everybody cool with that?
Yep.
It's going to be really hard in August, but like you guys all know, February and March, it's not. And everybody's agreeable to it, and they make the decision. So there's no like, why is it so hard in August thing.
Transparency.
Yeah, and I think, but you got to do the business. So as long as the volume's there, you can afford to do it. And that's the thing. But a few years ago, and again, this is all Danielle, because I don't love to travel. It's not something I love to do. I always love it when I'm there, and I enjoy it a lot. I just hate the travel part.
Right.
So I'm always not one to instigate the travel. So she came up with an idea a few years ago to take, instead of spending $3,000 to take the staff bowling, that we were going to take that money plus some other money. And because the restaurant is successful, and because we have cash flow, a substantial amount of money, and take the entire staff to Europe.
Oh, that's cool.
So they just pay for their own airfare. We cover virtually 100% of the food, lodging, rental cars, and then to and from the airport. We hire a service. And then the first trip we went to Paris and Bordeaux, and Danielle's a master at planning trips. She's like she should do that for a living. And that one was more wine centric. We got to go to Grad La Rose. We got to go to places that her and I have always wanted to go all over the place in Bordeaux.
When you close in the winter, I'm assuming?
So we do two weeks a year, the kids' vacation weeks.
Got it.
So everybody went. We did some restaurant stuff. We did some cooking in the house, big house. Everybody has a party. We pay for all the groceries. Everybody does their thing. Danielle and I are the old people that go to bed early. Our son's gone to all the trips.
That's cool.
The second year we went to Bologna, Parma, and that was more food centric. So we did lots of food tours and food stuff. I always do cycling while I'm there. Lots of drinking, lots of fun, lots of safe, good camaraderie, lots of different Airbnbs, which is really kind of fun. I do all the driving. She does all the navigating. So that's what, that takes a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and it's worth every penny because it's such a valuable thing. We found traveling to be so valuable for our careers, and we wanted to offer that to the young people that work for us now. So this year I'm not sure yet. She's been talking a little bit about Portugal, but as long as we can make this business work, the revenue, the volume, the weddings, the events, then we can afford to do it.
How does that make your business stronger?
I mean, I think it like just nobody does that. Like it's sort of a major corporation type thing.
Right.
We've always been against sort of the drinking holiday party thing anyway, because it makes everybody subservient to each other, and we really want people to relax and have fun and do different stuff and learn. And I think it's really hard. You know, you have to work and do the business. You have to put your nose to the grindstone. You have to work those 8-9 really hard months. There's no way around that. There's no like, oh, you can have an extra day off in the summer to go to your concert, or you can, you know, and certainly everybody's entitled to all of that. They get all of that. Danielle and I just don't do that. So personally, we'll never do that. We offer it to our staff. You know, we had one of our cooks had a death in the family. He's 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. We took care of it. We paid for his salary the entire time. We had another gentleman have a baby. We did 3 or 4 weeks of paid time off. We paid for that. You know, we try, and again, it's all about success of the business.
Yeah.
And if I'm willing to keep doing this and I'm capable of keeping to work as hard as I can make a decent living. They can make a decent living. We can afford to take trips to Europe and do cool stuff.
I think going to Europe too, I think that's an area of the world, East Asia, that has held on to its culture.
Oh,
around
yeah,
food.
totally.
And
Yeah.
I think America could, you know, take a lesson about what is hospitality. You go travel, you see what hospitality is. You see their values around food, their values around creating space for community. I think we've gone astray from that.
Yeah.
And when you can bring your staff into these places, have them experience that hospitality of the wine bar, or, you know, like these like neighborhood staples where people take a break every day for their 1 hour glass of wine.
You're
and
so
like,
right.
and like there's so much value in just giving them that perspective, the shift, and just like look at it from this angle, and to bring that back to the States, and the inspiration around that is invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, the lifestyle thing for me is what I love about traveling in Europe. And again, I hate to travel, but I love being there. You know, I mean, we took our son to Barcelona years ago when he was really small, like he was 4, and we were in a playground. So every playground you had to stop at that we saw, and I got a bocadillo sandwich at this little kiosk in the middle of this like playground, and I still remember it. Yeah. It was probably the worst bocadillo in Barcelona, but like the level is just so much higher that, you know,
their bad is amazing.
Yeah, their bad is amazing.
Yeah. In terms of like your years of a restaurateur, partner, owner, has there been a specific struggle for you that has helped you grow?
I don't know. That for me, no. I think I never was under any illusion that I was going to work harder at this than I'd worked at anything in my entire life. And that is getting more and more true every year. We're not going to be wealthy people after this. We will get to that porch. It'll probably be meager.
What is wealth?
Yeah, exactly. And you know that with a kid now, it's hard. It's good to explain like wealth, debt, cash. Like you need to understand wealth looks like something, but it might not be what it seems. We just want to eventually live a little slower, but I'm under no illusions that that's going to happen while we're operating Walkers Maine. I mean, that snippet of COVID where we got to like live like retirees was amazing, and that made me want to work harder, because like if this is what I get to do when I'm 60, I am all in. I'll work as hard as I have to. Yeah.
Is there something that hasn't come out of today's conversation, a question you wish I asked you, a topic you want to touch on that you think is important for restaurant owners to hear?
No, I mean, you know, from the get-go, I really wanted to, and I know I've said it 100 times, like, just be true to what you want to do, but realize there's a caveat to that, and look at the market. If you're smart, you will look at your market and come up with a concept that makes sense for that market and a price point that makes sense for that market. You know, again, like if I wanted to have an ancillary fancy little restaurant somewhere in town, yeah, I can afford to do that. I did that already. I did that 15 years. I'm all done. 20 years. I'm all done with that. But like if that's what you want to do eventually and you haven't done it, like I would highly advise you to open a restaurant that appeals to the most people possible in your market, and then get successful and then do it down the road.
Yeah, and if you can make that concept be something that doesn't hinge on you, Would you like, where it's like maybe a simpler, like focus on doing a few things really well instead of trying to do everything? Not to add on to your advice, but
again, I'm not a proponent, and I don't understand not working in your business. Like, I don't understand that. And that's probably the biggest fault I have. I want to be in the business. It's not a control thing. Like, everybody knows that works here, like specifically the back of the house, knows that I'm not like dictating like a crazy person.
Yeah.
I've
had a lot of people on the show that launched their first restaurant as the thing that has been their dream. And they go after that dream on day one. And then they realize later that I should have opened a barbecue joint to have been my cash cow, to cover my securities. And then once I get that thing going, then go focus on my dream.
Yeah. I mean, I think if your business isn't successful financially, you are not successful.
Right.
And I don't care if it's the best widget in the planet. If your deep fried green bean terrine is the best deep fried green bean terrine on the planet, if it's not successful, you're not successful.
I like to echo Rudy Mick's words in fiscal responsibility. And it doesn't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be like pouring money out of your ears, but if you're covering your liabilities and you're providing security for your family and your team, that needs to be a line in the sand.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how many times we have new staff come on. We'll do a catering job. It'll look like a tiny catering job. It might not make sense to them. Why are we doing this? Why is Justin on a Thursday in August in somebody's garage cooking something weird for this little party that financially doesn't seem to make sense?
Right.
There's a bigger picture there, and my answer to them is always, it's all willing to do if you're willing to do it.
Right.
It's all worth doing, if you're willing to do it. And that's how you have to operate your business.
I'm tempted to get into marketing and tech stack and all that sort of thing, but I have a feeling that's Danielle's lane. Is that safe to say?
Oh, 100%.
So I'm going to hold off on that stuff. But I am curious. So the format of the show is, how'd you get here? Where are you today? Where are we going? And I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on like bigger picture, the world we live in, how the restaurant industry fits into that world. Are there changes that have to happen? And like, how do we move the industry in a better direction?
I mean, I don't know. I think everybody should do what they want to do. I'm a huge fan of, a very prominent chef in Maine told me I should never open my own restaurant. I didn't take offense to it. I can see where she's coming from some days because it's really hard. I wouldn't ever say that to anybody else. I think you do what you want to do. You're in charge of your own destiny. I think though, concentrating on one concept, the whole work-life balance / equitable pay for your staff and this sort of thing is all based on your revenue and your volume. And so open a business that makes sense in the market, hire cooks at a high rate, make that work, pay them well, do the business that makes it happen. But if you think as the operator, you're going to be the one making the money, not working as much and paying your staff a ton of money, I just don't think that's a thing.
Yeah.
Not in our business.
Not sustainably, at least.
No. So, if you want to be a one-man show and do a 20-seat restaurant, that's a whole different model. That's your prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, look what Evan Hennessy's doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, every like I said, everybody's entitled to their own thing. Whatever you want to do, you do it. You do you. Don't judge me. And the whole award thing, like, I have no idea. I don't even look at it. It's never going to happen for me and some chefs that I really feel like deserve it as well. But it is what it is. Who knows?
Why do you think it's not going to happen for you?
I mean, I'm 40, almost 48 years old.
Is there something that you're doing that makes it?
I think it's what I'm not doing. I think it's.
What are you not doing?
I mean, I'm in fields cooking like macaroni and cheese for people for their wedding by myself. I'm not spending any energy on promotion, on any of that. I spend the time I need to spend at Walkers with the cooks and the staff here to make the food as good as humanly possible and as the best they can possibly produce. And then for months a year, I'm here every day anyway, but those hours that I'm not here and I'm off in a field somewhere, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's crazy at my age, I think, at our age, for both my wife and I, and to be doing what we're doing. I don't think most people really understand what's actually happening there. But it's what makes it successful.
Yeah. I have some final questions to ask you. We're at like an hour and like 15 minutes, or 2 hours and 15 minutes now. I appreciate you going long.
No worries.
I just really love today's conversation. I have to be honest.
Thank you. It's been great.
My pleasure, man. What is one thing about your business, a value, a process, a system that's uncommon and makes you truly unstoppable?
I think, menu changes are born out of kind of just wanting to make things different. I look at how cooks, what they like to eat, and I tailor food to them that makes it fun for them. If they love, Japanese food, I'll come up with something that's more geared towards that because I know they enjoy it. I think because we both work in the business, we're both here all the time, instilling that work ethic from the top, I think is key to our success. And doing more than what I think most people are willing to do to make the business successful enough to afford the staff these trips and different things.
Got it. The mission statement is to change the world by inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. I think we're going to accomplish that by sharing individual transformations, making an example of these people. So how have you personally transformed? Who are you today versus the man you were when you got into this industry? How are you better?
I mean, I think I've gotten better at working in the chaos. I think I was a much more control freak than I used to be. I look at things like cleanliness, organization. We find a time to do it when it's appropriate and not just have it be this like crazy or staying till 1 a.m. standard that it used to be for all those years. I've learned to listen to people a little bit more and try to understand what I can get out of what's possible for each person. So the only criticism I was ever given by somebody I truly respect was that I expected out of people what I expected out of myself. So I try to remember that every time and try not to be disappointed when something maybe isn't what I expected and try to work with them to make it better.
If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? I know it's a cheesy question, but
I think so. A successful person will do what an unsuccessful person won't, I think, is one. I have often said when I see somebody doing something that's very amateur, that if I died in a ditch and you moved on to another restaurant and they saw you doing this, they were going to look down on me. I don't know. I think Goonies Never Say Die is a big one from Danielle. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Awesome. This has been a lot of fun. I try to find my guests through talking to the community, asking who do you respect and admire and think would make a great guest on the show. I think that is my North Star. That's how I find people like you. So for that question, who do you respect and admire in this industry? I want another conversation like the one I had today with you. Who is that?
Well, obviously Danielle,
I'd love
who's 100% my better half, or the better half. Mike Famico, he is owner-operator of George Califf's Fine Foods in Barrington. So he's a near and dear friend, has helped me through some incredibly challenging times in the last several years. He's an amazing guy, works for the J Group, in the J Group. He would be an interesting one, kind of a different perspective. He's not really restaurant, or he has been, but and then Chris Gould in Portland, Chris and Paige.
I've had Paige. I would love to get Chris on the show.
I mean, he is, Ken and him are neck and neck to me for that sort of raw talent. And then Damien and Ilma Lopez, or sorry, Damien and Ilma Sansonetti, or Ilma Lopez, Damien Sansonetti of Cheval and Ugly Duckling.
I was on the phone with Ilma last night. We're going to make that happen.
Yeah, they're dear friends, and we all got ourselves through COVID, just kind of commiserating with each other, but they're hard workers.
She was one of the 3 people that said he does not get the credit he deserves, for the record. Yeah.
Well, we're all in the boat together. You know what I mean? So it's all good.
Yep. Mike, Chris, Damien, and Ilma, look out, I'm coming after you. And Danielle, of course, I'd love to get you all on the show. And how do we connect? If we were inspired by today's conversation, we want to come check out your restaurant, maybe we want to come work for you. What's the best way to connect?
Call Danielle. No, no, seriously, email, the Walkers Maine email. I've worked in this area for so long. Somebody probably has my number. Feel free to direct message me. I don't use social media for my own personal, but I do look at it. So,
do you know the handle? I got you
Justin
backed
Walker
up.
7 is
Yep,
my Instagram.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess 1 through 6 was already taken at that point. But anyhow, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Awesome. And this is where I say thank you so much, man. Honestly, this was a great conversation. I can't do what I do without people like you being willing to sit across from me, being willing to answer my hard questions, being willing to get open, to get vulnerable, to be transparent. It's not easy to do, and you make it possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
It.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.